Okay, picking up with Venturi. So we introduced the idea of popular culture. One of the things that happened in the 60s was when you're a kid, you read comic books. You go to college, you're supposed to read serious literature. You're a kid, you listen to rock and roll. Go to college, you're supposed to listen to classical music. What the 60s generation did is they just kept reading comic books. They kept listening to popular music, but they made it highly sophisticated. So let's see how that engages with Venturi. Popular culture, engaging the real world around us. Remember I showed you Camille Sitte's analysis of European squares, European plazas in front of buildings. Well, we don't live that way. This is how we live. And this is an extreme Las Vegas, but you go on the commercial road outside of any community, and there's the McDonald's, the other fast foods, the Walmart, etc. And that's how people live. Is our architecture engaging that world? So Denise Scott Brown taught at Penn, and in 1965 she left and started teaching at Berkeley and then UCLA, and traveling around the American Southwest photographing. And she had a relationship with Venturi. They got married shortly after. But she said, Bob, you got to come see this stuff. And we didn't really, I remember there's no way I was going to go to Las Vegas. I mean, a bunch of overweight women in spandex, sweatpants, carrying paper coffee cups full of nickels that they're putting in slot machines. Why would I want to see that? Then Tom Wolfe, who did that Kool-Aid acid test book, wrote an article about Las Vegas. It was in a book of his essays. And everybody said, maybe we should see that. I remember he wrote an article, Tangerine Flake, Candy Apple Baby, something about car customization. And I was working for a really cool architect. And he would, hang on, I gotta take this, be right back. Oh, wait, come on.
Oh my god, yeah, he was like chomping on his cigar. Yeah. He's so funny. And like, he can't enjoy his life. He's like, nah. Oh, I really want to see him in person. I feel like if we saw him like in real life, have you seen him? So what? Yeah, he's loud. I'm just curious how loud he actually is. I think he is. I know. She's not like seeing him. She's just taking it. Oh, you did it? Well, I mean, just not finishing. It's so fun. So you have to go ask how representation. Yeah. One of the things right now.
unfortunate list that I'm sending an announcement of my show opening tomorrow. And I have a techie sending it and needed me to confirm my password, whatever. So sorry about that. Anyway, so all of a sudden, you know, New York's leading architect has to go to the drag races on Long Island. It's a cool thing to do. So we're all engaging with popular culture. We're all listening to the Beatles and the Stones. So this culminates in learning from Las Vegas. So you guys should get the book. You can get a used copy for a couple bucks on Amazon. And there's several editions, but the paperback you can get is fine. Now, in Complexity and Contradiction, Venturi's first book, he refers to pop art, but he means high art, what's shown in the New York galleries, Jasper Johns. Venturi Scott Brown was talking about Ed Ruscha, a California artist. Totally different world. A couple of years ago, I said to Denise, I said exactly that to Denise. She said, yes, but he caught on quickly. So Ed Ruscha is a California artist. He did gunpowder paintings. He did paintings with, looks like charcoal, but it's gunpowder. But he made these really cool books. I had all of them. They're very valuable. I sold them at the Strand. But major artists looking at parking lots. And that's our culture. Anybody ever look at them? I remember following experience. I lived in Long Island and then New York and went to Penn. So when I took the train from Penn Station, Philadelphia, to Penn Station, New York, and it goes through New Jersey, industrial area, where there's chemical factories, oil refineries, tanks, gantries, smoke, all this bad pollution. And I went on a trip with my sister's fiance, became a prominent artist. And he's looking out the window. He says, that stuff is so cool. Look at the trusses. They're like minimalist sculpture. All of a sudden, it looked totally different to me. Did anybody ever look at parking lots? Here's something really nifty. Today, I have never checked the oil in my car. I just get it changed every 3,000 miles. I have a new car, 2008 Honda. But for years, for 20 years, I had a 68 Chevy Chevelle. Really cool car, stick shift. Well, every once a month, I check the oil with the dipstick and put more oil in. It burned oil. It leaked oil. All cars did. They just don't anymore. But here, look, it's darker here because these are where people park. And they only park here if the front spaces are full. You want to park nearest the store. And all cars would leak. Not much, just a few drips of oil from the oil pan into the engine. So you see the dark stains here. Here's the coolest parking lot in LA, Dodger Stadium, baseball stadium. It's like Baroque architecture. It's like St. Peter's by Bernini. Then he did 9 swimming pools. Just photograph. Lots of people in LA have swimming pools. Run around and photograph just ordinary swimming pools. Ordinary LA apartment buildings. Now this is stuff we architects would be contemptuous of. Oh, it's not Mies. It's not Corbu. It's not Paul Rudolph. No, it's just ordinary LA architecture. Look at it. That's what Venturi started to do. Look at it. Here's the coolest one. Royal Road Test. Took an antique Royal typewriter, 63 Buick LeSabre, took it out on a country road, took it up to 110 miles an hour, and threw the typewriter out the window. then went and photographed the debris from the crashed typewriter. Photographed every part along the road. So part of this, one of my classmates then became associate in Venturi Scott Brown's office was Steve Eisenhower. He's co-author of Learning from Las Vegas. When he arrived at Penn, he had gone to Sarah Lawrence College. His father is a famous theater designer and sound designer. So to this day, if you're performing and you go someplace, they have an Eisenhower system. You bring your flash drive, plug it in, and what the lighting is going to do for your show is all programmed in your flash drive with his software. But Steve arrived at Penn with a suitcase full of Leica cameras and lenses. And he did a lot of the photography for the Venturi office. While he's driving, and he'd go everywhere on a 10-speed bicycle. And he'd only eat lunch at McDonald's. And he died of a heart attack in his 60s. But he's driving to work, and there's a White Tower. So White Tower was a hamburger chain before McDonald's. They're still around. And I can never tell what White Tower, White Castle. They serve tiny, silly hamburgers. But it's what the working man would go for lunch. They'd be near factories in industrial areas. They're pretty much gone now. But Steve says, well, that's interesting. And then he discovers all their buildings through 50 years was done by one architect, worked for the company, and they have photographs of the opening of every building. So they have these high-res, perfect photographs. So he and Hirshhorn created a book, White Towers, looking at this stuff. Then Steve started looking at Wildwood, New Jersey. So Jersey Shore, it's a working class vacation area. You go with the kids, you stay for a week in a motel, and your kids can play at the beach. That's your vacation. But they fix up the hotels. They're just low-end motels. But they put a sign on them and a few decorations on them to make a cool vacation. So we're staying at the Caribbean. Or staying at the Seabreak. They made these cool signs. So Steve and a couple other people started documenting. A lot of them are gone because he wants to stay in a 60-year-old hotel. So they're gone and updated. But he documented them. A lot of them are being restored, and it's a cool area. And Wildwood has a consciousness of being a cool place, and they're trying to preserve as many of their original motels as possible. So, where does this thinking come from? Well, Venturi Scott Brown did a major exhibit in 1976, time of the bicentennial, at the Renwick Gallery, part of the Smithsonian Museum in Washington. Signs of Life, Symbols in the American City. There are 3 parts to the show. Part 1, the home. And they present 3 homes. And what they did was, this is 2 here and here. Huge cloth screens. Printed on them are photos. And this was a brand new technology at the time. The homes are 3 ordinary American homes. This one is kind of Williamsburg Federalist brick. The inside, this couple has over the years collected these antiques. This is probably pretty expensive. Maybe they go antiquing. They buy this table, it's been painted over. To peel the paint, finish it. It's got these delicate chairs. You wouldn't plop down in this chair. It does have a comfortable chair you can sit on. Courier knives, prints, one of these medieval bulging mirrors. What political party might these people belong to? Well, today they'd probably be Democrats, but at the time they'd probably be Republicans. They might work for the State Department as a bureaucrat in the State Department. Here's a home. Oh, and he puts these little bubbles labeling what the stuff is and what it means, these cartoon bubbles. Here's a Levittown house. So it's got a courier knives mailbox, a Versailles aluminum storm door. You pop out the glass in the spring and put in the screen, the insect screen in the spring for the summer. Your car's out front. Notice here, no sidewalk. You walk along the edge of the road. Here we get a sidewalk, the kid's tricycle. Inside, it's not the living room, it's the main family room. It's the den. We've got a techie TV set, a pine coffee table. You can put your feet up on this table. A baseball and mitt on the hassock here. Colonial convivial fake prints. Here's a South Philadelphia Italian neighborhood row house. Venturi says, that's the one I like. It reminds me of growing up. Everything's reduced down to thin 2 dimensions. Again, all these symbols in the mailbox and the patterns in the door. Inside, a credenza with a TV set, Regency style furniture. Kids are boys in the military. Here's a picture of him in his uniform. Rich curtains, thick carpeting. Now their point is, These are how people live. Let's look at it. Now, he should have done one more. This is good architecture, quote unquote. So here we get a Stella painting, a Donald Judd sculpture, a stainless steel coffee table, white leather, furniture, a rattan or Moroccan wool rug. And if you're just graduated school, you can't afford this yet. Here's the starter version. So you get married, you get out of architecture school, you get butcher block wood table, Breuer Cheska chairs, Museum of Modern Art calendar, Museum of Modern Art clock, butcher block wood shelves. This is the starter version of this. So we are told in architecture school, this is good taste, this is good architecture. These are bad. Venturi says, no, they're just different cultural groups. We're in the creative cultural group, architects, artists, journalists, but there are other cultural groups. So Venturi gets seriously interested in Levittown. He actually did a book that was never published, Learning from Levittown. Now, when Bob and Denise were at Penn, there was a sociologist at the school, Herbert Gans. He moved into Levittown. He says, you want to understand it? He's a sociologist. I'm going to live there. Then I'll, who are these people? What do they do? What do they think? He wrote a book about it, The Levittowners. Now, when it was built, this is what it looked like. They cut down all the trees, flattened the land, built these identical houses. The advantage was they were highly affordable. I think I said this before. If you're starting a family, you get a house, you go to the appliance store, you want to buy, well, we're going to buy a refrigerator and a washing machine and a dryer and a dishwasher. What discount can you give us? We're getting all four. What does Levitt say? I want 1,000 refrigerators, 1,000 washing machines, 1,000 dryers, and 1,000 dishwashers. What discount can you give me? And he doesn't go to the appliance store. He goes directly to General Electric that manufactures them. He gets them for a third of what you would pay. And he can pass that savings on to you when you buy the house. It comes with all four. So he doesn't go and say, I need 100 2x4s. He says, I need 10,000 2x4s. So they're all identical. They're not identical. There's three price ranges. These are $7,500. Then there's the $11,000 and the $12,000 houses. Now, he does a lot of interesting things. He has curving streets to slow down traffic. He has three-way intersections to make them less dangerous instead of four-way intersections. But you're looking at them, they're all identical, there's no trees. What do they look like today? Try to buy one of those things. They're very desirable. They're all different. They've been added on to by various owners over the years. The trees are all grown up. They're safe, desirable neighborhoods. Now, when these are being built, we were told these are bad. These are good. Public housing. They're socialist. They're based on Corbu's work. They're urban. Suburban is bad. Sprawl. Urban is good. High density. What happened to Pruitt-Igoe? It was such a disaster, they were blown up. And they're not the only ones. Louis Kahn did public housing in Philadelphia, dynamited. New York, as bad as public housing is in New York, it's better than most of the rest of the country. And so New York's public housing is still here. But many cities have torn them down. They've just been disasters. Main reason is as follows. Here's a neighborhood. It's a slum. It's got crime. It's a bad neighborhood. But people have been living here maybe for a couple generations. Maybe your parents are just down the street. Your grandparents are nearby. You know the neighbor who will watch your kid from 3 o'clock when they get out of school till 5 o'clock when you get home, in return for which you shovel their sidewalk when it snows. Then all of a sudden they tear all this down, they put up this thing, they put in random people that came from a lottery. You don't know anybody on your floor, you don't know anybody in your building, you don't trust them, you don't know who to get to babysit. In terms of social networking, it doesn't work. That has to be built up historically over long periods of time. So, concept addressed. Venturi is advocating a respect for different cultures and classes. Say, everybody, automobile is bad. You should do everything on a bicycle. How am I supposed to drop off one kid at ballet lessons, the other kid at soccer practice, and get groceries for a family of 4 on a 10-speed bicycle? Well, you're not supposed to have kids. Well, you know, what is this? Next part of the show, a series of panels looking at how communities work. Levitt did not say, let's just build a bunch of bad houses and let people figure it out. There's a lot of thought here, like one of the things architects put down is the front lawn. Everything happens in the backyard. It's where the kids play, it's where you have the barbecue, it's where the neighbors come over. Well, what's the front lawn for? It's a waste of fertilizer. How many tons of fertilizer is used every year to fertilize front lawns that do absolutely nothing? Well, that's how you present yourself. That's your suit of clothes. Well, what does this jacket do? Well, since I'm a slob and disorganized, it gives a little bit of an illusion that I'm a professor. It's presenting myself. That's what the front lawn does. Has anybody studied it, understood it, thought in those terms? That's what he's doing here. Here's a little village in a Christmas card. Here's the church. Here's the snow. That's what people aspire to. That's what they're trying to imitate in their Levittown. Why? What? How does it work? What are they doing? What are they thinking? Down the street. Levitt curves the streets. There's a reason for that. So you don't have a look of, how far does that go? It looks quaint. It looks like you can handle it and understand it. So Venturi is analyzing all these approaches. Then from the curb, what do you put it, how do you announce yourself? What's the path to your house like? What's the lawn in front like? What is it trying to prevent? What kind of people leave a car in front of their house? And what kind do not? What does it mean? What are you saying about yourself by having a car or not having a car? These people put a car in front of their house. These people do not. From the curb. And then the doorstep. Okay, what political party are these people? Republican, they've got an eagle over the door. Probably have an American flag, we don't see it. But all kinds of people in all kinds of classes are saying, announcing who they are. And then the backyard. All of a sudden it becomes informal. You can be wearing a sweatshirt, have neighbors over for the barbecue. So, understanding reality as it is. The third part of the show, signs. Now, this is the original or an early mobile sign. It was mobile gas, Saucony vacuum, with a flying Pegasus. Now it's Helvetica mobile with a red O. Chermayeff took away our flying horse. Daddy, can we go to the gas station with the flying horse? And gave us a red Helvetica O. Phillips 66. McDonald's. Sunoco. They had to make a lot of these signs. Nobody had collected them for the exhibit. So, concepts addressed. Celebration of signs. Finding signs in architectural traditions, including modernism. Confrontation of commercial. Signs are bad because they're advertising services of companies. Companies are bad because they're capitalists, they're not socialists. There should be the state-owned gas station, one company owned by the state. We all get our gas there. That's modern architecture. And then we're condemning of private business. So there's no way we would want to look at signs. Venturi does. Let's confront consumerism. Obviously there are bad things about it, but obviously there are good things about it. How does it work? What is it? Recognition of good design without fashion bias. Now, in the last part of Complexity and Contradiction, Venturi writes, is not Main Street almost all right? And then what would make it truly right? More signs, more clutter. Everybody freaked out. There's a whole section about that in my Philadelphia School book. So Venturi was picking on Peter Blake, who was advocating cleaning up America. Now, yes, let's get rid of litter. Let's get rid of bad design. Let's get rid of huge mountains of automobile carcasses piled up outside of cities. Now they've changed steel mill processes where those cars are now valuable. They can be melted down for new steel. But before that, it was pretty ugly. There were abandoned cars in front of Pratt that would sit there for years right in front of our building. Times Square was a hub of prostitution, pornography, drug dealing, and crime. Needed cleaning up. Philip Johnson was hired to do a proposal where they would get rid of all the signs were bad, and put in marble arcades, try to make Times Square look like Park Avenue, where office headquarters. Venturi said, no, signs are good, not everywhere, but certainly in Times Square. He called it the honky-tonk district, probably a better term. Everybody said, you know what? I think Venturi may be right. And Peter Blake himself said, I got it wrong. A bunch of little old ladies in tennis shoes, namely me, Peter Blake, were running around wanting to do away with Times Square. Venturi led us to realize that we need more, not less. So today, every building must have a sign from the second floor to the seventh floor. It's required. Anybody been in Times Square recently? Past couple of years? What was it like? I went to the theater on 45th Street. And we walked over to Broadway to look for a taxi. You couldn't move. Every kid in the country thinks they should come to Times Square and see the action. What action? Anyway, it's vital and alive. You can't move. It's filled with people. I tell this is an old slide because these are antique taxi cabs. So remember, Venturi put a sign on Grand's Restaurant, one of his first projects. Everybody freaked out. Well, Gropius did it on the Bauhaus, one of the three most important buildings of modern architecture, Villa Savoye by Corbu, the Barcelona Pavilion by Mies, the Bauhaus by Walter Gropius. That's modern architecture. It's got a sign on it. Venturi proposed the Billboard building, where the whole facade is a sign. Football Hall of Fame. Now, I don't remember the year, but I get my Architecture Aujourd'hui, French architecture magazine, and this is on the cover. Whoa, what's he doing now? And he's saying the beach house, today they were very rich people, but houses were getting smaller in the 70s. And so here's a tight little, you don't want to be in the house, you want to be on the beach. So all you need is a dining area, first floor here. Kitchen, dining area, stairs up to tiny bedrooms. And then you stick the architecture on the front. Here's the architecture. And he looks at 18th century architect, I don't remember who this is, who looked at a hut and said it can be decorated in these various applied styles. So that's what Venturi does. Once you've got your basic house, you can then stick on it Greek, Egyptian, colonial, Palladio, another Egyptian, Art Nouveau, McDonald's. So, of course, everybody's outraged. But then you notice this is Henri Labrouste, Bibliothèque Saint-Geneviève, pioneering example of modern architecture done with iron. But this is, Labrouste won the Prix de Rome. When you win the Prix de Rome from the Beaux-Arts, I call it Beaux-Arts. when you enter Rome, you go to Rome or Athens. You document a classical building. What did it originally look like? And here's a little temple that Labrouste is documenting, and here's Venturi's Greek facade. So Steve Eisenhower did a house for his parents retiring in New Haven on the water. And here are these fat columns. Here they're just 2 dimensions. Now the house, there's a whole story about the house I won't go into. But Eisenhower's father was an acoustical engineer. And there are hundreds of loudspeakers built into this ceiling, making the whole room a loudspeaker. You're in the loudspeaker. And here is Michael Graves, the Disney building, inspired by this, with caryatids, not classical sculptures, but the 7 dwarfs. What's the little one's name? Anybody? Grumpy, Sneezy, whatever. I don't know. Here's some houses by the firm. Now, this is one of several houses for the Brandts. The Brandts were Andy Warhol's partner in doing Interview magazine. And this house is in Connecticut. No entrance. Why would you have an entrance? Nobody uses the entrance. You go in through the garage. Now the Brandts are collectors. They have several Venturi houses. And here's a house, the Lieb House, 67. Done on the shore in New Jersey. It illustrates Venturi's notion of the ugly and the ordinary. It was going to be torn down to build a bigger new beach house. The Brandts bought it and had it shipped to Long Island. They were rolled down the highways, put on a barge, and brought to their estate in Long Island. The Venturis, Bob and Denise, had 1 kid, Jim Venturi. And he worked in Wall Street, made a lot of money in technology. And he's a filmmaker. He's done a documentary movie on the firm, but it's been years, it still hasn't come out. New York was building a new Staten Island ferry terminal on the New York side. So the ferry comes from Staten Island to Lower Manhattan. You get out, you go to your job in Wall Street, or get on the subway. What are you worried about the whole trip? I'm going to be late. So he puts a giant clock up here. Didn't get built. Here's another proposal with a giant TV screen. So you could change it with the news. Then he did a competition entry for the American Pavilion at an exposition in '92 in Spain. Now, this is a very important building and I don't know anything about it. So it's Gordon Moo Hall in Princeton, New Jersey. It's one of many academic buildings the firm did. They did a lot of laboratories too. That was their bread and butter, doing campus laboratories. But the patterning on the building all means something, but I don't know what it is. Here is Freedom Plaza. So, the white, think of this as a map. The Capitol is here, the White House is here. Pennsylvania Avenue diagonally connects the two. Here's Pennsylvania Avenue. In the middle of it, he puts a map showing the whole thing. Originally, he wanted models of the Capitol and the White House. And he wanted these slabs to line up a view. I don't remember what the view is of. But he had to settle for plans. Wasn't enough budget for the models. So it's just plans of the White House and the Capitol. But it sort of reminds us of Copley Square competition entry that he did. Now, second to last building. Philadelphia has a couple orchestras. The Philadelphia Philharmonic is one of the top 3 or 4 orchestras in the country. There's also the Philadelphia Pops, which does more popular music. They needed a new concert hall, and Venturi was interviewed. Now, they say, well, you'd be a natural. This is classical music. You're Italian. He says, yeah, but I'm not Catholic. I'm a Quaker. He's got to undermine himself. Anyway, he didn't get the job. But look at how his building picks up the definition of the street. This is what they did do. The Kimmel Center. So it has a concert hall, but a lot of stuff in here. It's a huge cultural center. It's like the Lincoln Center in one building. But look at how it totally ignores its environment. This could be anywhere. It has nothing to do with its urban setting, typical of modern architecture. So think of the 3 key figures in modern architecture. Corbu, Villa-Savoye. Where is this? What about this building tells us it's in suburban Paris? The Bauhaus by Walter Gropius. How does it relate to its surroundings? The Illinois Institute of Technology campus by Mies van der Rohe. Plopped down in the middle of a neighborhood that it has no relationship to. Now maybe this road goes through, but I don't think that's a street. So totally, just characteristic of modern architecture, to totally ignore its context. How hard is it to pay some attention? Comparing the two. Last building, Sainsbury Wing. So it was wonderful that Venturi got this major commission to cap off his career. So this is the National Gallery in London. This is Trafalgar Square. So the National Gallery is kind of a awkward neoclassical building. And they wanted an addition here. So over the decades, there were numerous proposals. They were about to do it. And most of them are just modern boxes that have nothing to do with the original building, and nothing to do with its setting. No relationship to what's around it. That's modern architecture. So Prince, now King Charles, has a big interest in architecture. He doesn't like modern architecture. And a lot of modern architecture in England is pretty ugly, just to express an opinion. And a lot of it is brutalist architecture. I mean, badly proportioned, massive concrete. And Prince Charles actually started an architecture school to teach traditional architecture. One of these proposals that was about to get built, Prince Charles says, it looks like a carbuncle on the nose of an old friend. Nobody knew what a carbuncle was. Apparently it means like a wart. So that stopped it. And they held a closed competition. They invited about 5 architects to do something that would be sympathetic with the original building. And Venturi won the competition. So here's the original building. Here's the entrance to the Sainsbury wing. And here is Venturi's building. And you see it working very sympathetically with its context. Now, there's actually 4 different facades to this building. Each one is reflective. This one is neoclassical. This one is glass. And these 2 are different also. So here's the original building, and then here's Venturi's. Same limestone as the original. So Venturi insists it's not a neoclassical building. This is not, no neoclassical architect would make an entrance like this. But he picks up the columns and the cornices from the original building. Now, it's a complicated building, but the most interesting part for us is the galleries on the top floor. So he joins the original building. He has a strong axis this way and an axis this way. Here he is picking up the cornice. So there's a lower level, a lobby level, and then stairs going up to the galleries. Now, the galleries. So here's the gallery, and then there's glass going all the way around. So light comes into these boxes and then into the gallery. The lighting engineer here is the same as Kahn's on Yale British Studies. So up the stairs into the gallery. So here are the windows up here, illuminating down. Light comes in and then comes in through these windows. Very reminiscent of Kahn in Yale British Studies. This is Kahn. Now, the art is incredibly beautiful. It's early Renaissance paintings. He plays all kinds of games with the arches and their relationships to the molding. So there's now a proposal to redo the lobby. They want a coffee shop and stuff like that. Fortunately, nobody's suggesting changing the galleries, but they want to totally change his entrance lobby. And there's big back and forth about it. So, classical elements in contemporary architecture. Can you put dark Ionic or Corinthian columns on contemporary architecture? Notion that good architecture can be in any style. Used to be glass and concrete are good, classical columns are bad. Well, you can have, what about, can you have good and bad classical columns and good and bad concrete and glass? Now, just wrapping up, Venturi taught us to look back at history. One of the architects that we had forgotten about, three of them are Furness, Sloan, and Lutjens. Were all important architects in their day that have been totally forgotten in modern architecture. Venturi reintroduced an interest in them in complexity and contradiction. So he looks at Sohn, who eventually took over 3 townhouses in London for his office, home, and museum. And Venturi likes this colonnade with no columns. What? Now you just put a big beam up here and hang this so it's decorative. But it's like, you can't do that. And then it has a big central space where he shows off his collections. But Sohn also did the Dulwich Picture Gallery. And let's look at the galleries. And here we have Venturi's Sainsbury wing. Finally, over the years, when I would talk about the Furness Library, in the old days, there wasn't any internet. There wasn't any, Google Images. So if I wanted a color picture of the Furness building at University of Pennsylvania, I'd have to go down there and take a picture of it, which is always difficult. I had to go in the winter, otherwise these leaves are blocking it. And the building was black. It had 150 years of soot from coal on it. So how do you get a picture of a black building? Well, now I can't, God knows where those slides are. And there are no Google images of the building when it was dirty. But this building was black, and this interior space they put a floor here to double the space. So from the main reading room you did not have these skylights. It was just a dark, dank space. And they could not renovate it because if they're going to renovate it, they'd have to bring it up to code. And that would be too expensive. Then they raised the money and they did. So Venturi Scott Brown were the architects during the renovation. So Venturi and Denise, the two architects who appreciated the building, everybody else wanted to tear it down. It's now one of the most favorite buildings in the country. But they met at a faculty meeting where they were talking about tearing the building down. And Denise, who was just a graduate student, starting to teach, spoke up and said, we should not. So after the meeting, Bob comes up to her and says, I agree with you. She said, why didn't you talk up and support me? So then they went out for coffee. But it was a lot of money, but they raised it. The Fisher family put up the money. And total renovation, they cleaned everything. All this is leaded glass. It's like stained glass, but all clear. But they're lead patterns with pieces of glass in them. They took those all apart, cleaned every piece of glass, put them back together. They took out this floor, so the space is again open to the skylights, cleaned everything. And I have to stop in every time I'm in Philadelphia just to look at it. So one of Venturi's first projects was a renovation of the Duke House for NYU, the History of Art department. And he just left the building alone and respected it. And here he is respecting the original building. So, any questions? I took these slides out because I already showed them, but just because they're a who. It was sight's best. All these buildings are gone. So, any questions or thoughts? Let me stop my recording. I'll be right with you.